Hello and welcome. My name is Baz Khuti. I'm working with CDO Magazine in a series of interviews, and also with MIT CDIQ and also the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Philip Miller, co-founder and CEO of Solidatus. Welcome, Philip.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. If we get started, Philip, can you give us a bit about what Solidatus does, what's the impetus behind the company, and why you co-founded it with Philip Dunton in 2011?
So the impetus behind the company, well, I guess there's a little bit of personal history that's necessary. You've got to have I'm a firm believer in you've got to have a good problem to work with to make life interesting. And I spent 20 years in investment banking and looked at all the problems around me, I guess, over the years, and tried to solve them with technology as best as I could. I built some, and Phil Dunton has also built some fantastic cutting edge pieces of technology. And I think one of the learnings we had with all of it is that we can build some really great technology, but if we don't look after the organization around us, if we don't understand how it's working, it becomes quite difficult to maintain and look after. To give a sort of a personal example, I did quite a lot of regulatory reporting work over the last 10, 15 years. And that's a very important project for an organization. So this is principally in banking. Banking is data rich and regulated. And that for me gives us a lot of interest there. There's a lot of diversity in the organization. There's lots and lots and lots of departments doing lots of different products, particularly in investment banking. Lots of diversity in terms of goals. Regulatory reporting, though, is, I guess, what's known as non-discretionary spend. You've got to get your regulations right. And so I've been given projects, solve this regulatory issue for me. One set of projects starting, I guess, with Dodd-Frank in 2010, after the credit crunch of 2008, really presented me with a series of problems one year after another that looked and felt very similar, but demonstrated to me beyond any doubt that organizations need to understand how their data works better. And for me, that manifested itself in a problem around metadata. So the actual context in which data operates. So people process data, they all are part of an ecosystem. Right. I would have done one regulatory challenge, say Dodd-Frank, and then I would be given another. They are ostensibly the same thing with a slight variation, but the organization behind the scenes would have moved on, and I would have had to go back and rediscover what the organization looked like in order to get through the next regulation. This happened enough times for me to think, gosh, there's really a problem behind the scenes. Organizations are not looking after their blueprint as well as they look after their code base. They're not looking after the sort of back office functions which enable them to get their license to operate as much as they are looking after their profits. That's no big surprise for anybody. Right. And so I kind of looked at it as a repetitive problem. So every year I was having to relearn an organization. And I thought to myself, talking with Phil, well, what if we could do this a different way? What if we didn't have to relearn the organization every day? What if the organization was kind of self-documenting, a bit like a code base looks after itself in source control? Right. And so we kind of looked at it from the practitioner's point of view. And we thought, okay, there's something here, and we would like to solve it in software. And so that's where we came to. Looking around at how data management was done, we just decided it was old-fashioned and it didn't really match the way people were working. At the time, people were moving from old-fashioned waterfall to agile, and then eventually DevOps. And there's been all sorts of things like data ops behind the scenes and everything else that's been coming out of the same school of thought. So we figured that as frontliners, we should take the challenge of our bosses and actually say, okay, I'm going to propose a solution to this. I'm going to make your lives cheaper and faster and better. And actually, the upshot should be that your organizations can work more safely.
So, yeah, if I summarize kind of deep domain knowledge working in the financial industry and investment banks and so on, and you saw this opportunity, but it's also taking a risk. Taking a risk in taking a well-paying job and whatever. And our listeners really enjoyed kind of the entrepreneurial side of that. If I just cover that for 2 seconds here, is what drove you to say, okay, I want to build my own here, rather than sort of just working for somebody?
I guess partly there's an entrepreneur inside me that was desperate to get out, and I've enjoyed immensely working with the big problems, with the massive compute stacks, and being given almost, to my mind, almost infinite capacity to innovate. But actually nothing lasted long. So I guess part of the thing was I wanted to make something that would be around for a long time. I don't think that we built a piece of software to be acquired by somebody. We built a piece of software to last a long time. The other part of it was, I guess, part of a conversation I had. And I won't embarrass people by saying who it was, but I went to people and said, look, I think there's a solution to this problem that's costing you tens of millions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
And they went, yeah, we can see that you're talking sense, but we just don't have time for you to go away for 2 years to solve this problem. We have to solve this problem today. And I said, well, what if I solve it on my own? And they went, we'll probably buy it from you. All right, that's fine. Off I go. I'm going to do it then. And so, pitch up in the front room with some friends, and we started coding. And, it wasn't risk-free. I mean, goodness me, the risk is every single day. I wake up and every day there are more people, and, we've got more customers, and we have more reputation, and, there's something inane wrong with the world, or all the way up to, goodness me, there's a bug in the software, and all those worries, and COVID. And COVID.
Yeah. Well, great. Thanks for sharing that kind of personal view on what you set the company up. Can you shed some color on how does Solidatus effectively handle a lineage, and what is lineage, and why is it so important for organizations to adopt this?
Okay, so this is a difficult one to kind of just say without a whiteboard, and I'm not going to try and turn around and do a magic whiteboard anywhere. Yeah. Organizations don't just exist in a bubble, and even the most organized of organizations has multiple sources for its data and multiple ways its data is used. There's very few organizations that you could just describe on totally in just a simple ledger of income and expenditure. Lineage really is a bit of a maligned term, but we think about it as relationships, the context in which you operate your organization. At the base level, we're going to call it data lineage. Data is born somewhere, it's used in some places and transformed and has some maths done on it perhaps, or it's transferred verbatim around an organization, and it eventually goes somewhere as an output. So it's inputs and outputs with a whole bunch of connectivity between it. And we think of this as sort of the blueprint of the organization. So if you draw all the lines of lineage together, you kind of get the operations of the organization. You can link not only data processing facilities to data processing facilities, or databases to databases, but also the people who use that data, the processes for which they use that data, the places they use that data in. A typical reasonably sized organization, so think a bank, will have people in one location, data in another, and obligations from a third place. If you're even going to your local high street bank and saying, I have dollars and I want to get some pounds, that's two currencies involved, and the currency is coming from somewhere, and it's going to go into your pocket, and there's money laundering to consider, and this and that and the other. There's so many concerns behind the use of data these days: privacy concerns, environmental concerns. And they all link to each other. You can't just pull on one strand of an organization without pulling on lots of others at the same time. And the lineage is kind of the weave of the organization. It's how it holds itself together. If you don't understand your lineage, at the end of the day, you are doomed to having inefficient, slow project turnaround, and so on and so forth. And it's important for an organization, I think, to adopt a lineage approach, because guess what? That's how the organization's built. You may design it one way, but when you go to your developers, or you go to your, to your consulting companies, they go to the front line like I was, and they are drawing the strands of data and process and people from all over the organization into one place. And they are, on their plans, on their pictures, they're drawing lines and boxes. And that's how the organization is built. Not recognizing that is bad, because your organization cannot be conceptually designed. It's physically built. And not understanding how the physical, the conceptual kind of link together, that's a risk. And that's where things like credit crunches happen, LIBOR problems happen, environmental problems happen, and so on. It's all part and parcel of the same game.
It's great talking to you, Phil. Thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed the conversation. Please visit CDO Magazine for additional interviews. Thank you so much.
Thank you.